Welcome to a brand new episode of the Bold Take Podcast. I'm Austin Hill. With me, as always, is Austin Wader. And today we're back talking college football action. This may be the earliest an episode of the Bold Take Podcast has ever been recorded in the history of mankind. But we do what we have to do to get the job done.
Yep.
But it was an interesting week of college football action. And um, make sure go and listen to the NFL episode. I don't think it will come out until after this episode. So if you're early, it may not be out yet, but as soon as it comes out, be ready to go give that a listen. NFL trade deadline has came and went, and there were some interesting moves made by several teams. It wasn't exactly a dormant trade deadline, but didn't see a ton of huge names go on the move. But we'll talk about that more later. Let's get into college football action. And look, unfortunately, let's just take the Band-Aid right off. Ole Miss beats down the Hogs 63-31 in Fayetteville. And look, I know we talked about it on the podcast. This was a concern for the U of A was against against Mississippi State. They allowed over 400 yards of total offense. Fortunately, they just had some replay reviews, and the defense stepped up in those red zone situations and goal line situations, and really kept Mississippi State from getting any points. But with how talented and diverse this Ole Miss offense is, and how experienced it is, we knew that the Hogs were not going to be able to allow that same kind of offensive efficiency getting down the field, because this is a team that was going to finish a lot in these games. And that's really what ended up happening. This defense just could not stop frankly, it was an air raid. And it was really just between Jackson Dart and Jordan Watkins. But it really makes you question the talent on this team. Look, I'm not going to go out here and call every single Razorbacks player terrible, but it feels like I don't know. I feel like I've been hearing this every year since Hudson Clark got to the U of A that this is the year he's going to break out, and it feels like he's just not playing well. I know he's not the sole reason for it, but he feels like a guy who's supposed to have stepped up and been this huge piece in the secondary for so long that they've committed so much time and effort into constantly playing and constantly trying to improve. And it feels like he's still making the same mistakes and he's still getting beat over the top. Um, Look, this is just not the kind of performance they needed. Look, all you got to do is go, 1-3 in these last games, and you're bowl eligible. But this is not a game. It's not a way you want to lose a game. Ole Miss is the better team, but the Hogs definitely are capable of a better fight than this.
Yeah. Before I go into that, just want to say a quick RIP to Ben, the
Yes.
goodest boy in college football. Really sad to see him go. We're recording this on Friday. Fortunately, it was reported yesterday. So RIP, the goodest boy in college football. You will be missed. But as far as this game, yeah, it was just a butt whooping, and this is part of my talk of I fired Sam Pittman after Stillwater, and just getting the team fired up for games is just not there. And I know the talent level and everything's a whole different discussion, but it's just a lack of true coaching in my eyes. I mean, I feel like he's been completely outcoached in every single game this season. Truly, the perfect example is the LSU game. They came off the big win against Tennessee. They host LSU at home. Great coaching matchup, supposedly, between him and Brian Kelly. After they lose 34-10, first thing Sam Pittman says is, I got out coached.
You can't have that.
Yeah. So listen, I think Sam's a nice person. I think he's a really nice person. But as far as a football coach, he's meant to be a position coach. He's never meant to be a head coach. I want him gone. But everything I have heard says if he wins one more game, which they play Louisiana Tech, so they should win that one, that they will get to bowl eligibility. He will most likely work his way off the hot seat if he makes it to a bowl game. I really disagree. I feel like 6-6. If we're rewarding a coach for going 6-6, um, that sets a bad precedent. I have heard some small rumors going around that Sam might retire at the end of the year, though, too. So I don't know what's going to happen on the Hill, but unfortunately, it seems like Sam's going to be there. If he does coach next year, he will be the head coach at Arkansas. Um, yeah, I'm not enjoying that. Yeah, pretty much. And then this game was the icing on the cake. I mean, not only was Jackson Dart great, we literally had to cover one guy, and we couldn't do it. So yeah, this game was rough. It was really bad. Um, Ole Miss looked phenomenal. They have worked. They have their playoff hopes still alive. They play Georgia this weekend, so give them credit for that one. But yeah, very, very underwhelmed with how things have gone in Fayetteville.
Yeah, not great. And let's turn it to Champaign, Illinois, where the Illini are downed by the Golden Gophers in Minnesota. And look, it's feeling like now we're seeing kind of the skill or the talent cap for this team. It feels like they've almost gotten for Illinois. It feels like they've almost gotten as far as they're going to get this year. After the loss to Oregon, now playing Minnesota, and just not coming out. And what a turnaround with PJ Fleck in Minnesota. Not a great start to the season, but now 6-3, put themselves bowl eligible. Really incredible turnaround from. I mean, in that USC game, I believe they had a losing record going into that game against USC. Um, so really cool turnaround to see this season. But for Illinois, falling to 6-3, this is not the way this team started. And I know they would like to get this one back, but it just feels like the magic and the luck has run out with this Illini team.
Yeah, and I think it's transferred over. I mean, this Minnesota team, we watched them, and everyone watched them week one against North Carolina. You wondered exactly what this team was going to be this year. Um, and they have rattled off four straight wins against USC, UCLA, Maryland, and now Illinois. They got them at 6-3. Never doubt PJ Fleck. I think is that is a safe thing. He's always been a solid football coach. But this was an old school Big Ten game. Uh, Really, that's all I have to say here. I mean, it was a close game early, and then Minnesota was able to pull away near the very end of it. So both teams are 6-3. I think both teams are pretty solid. Um, and just my personal opinion, I think Bielema got outcoached in this game.
Yeah. And when you look at it, Rutgers, Penn State, Wisconsin left on the Minnesota schedule. If they went out, I'm just saying they beat the number 11. They beat the number 11 USC. They beat number 24 Illinois. If they beat Penn State, they'll be probably a top 10 team when they beat Penn State. I'm just saying there might be an outside chance that this Minnesota team could sneak their way into a college football playoff. Benefit of the doubt because they play in the Big Ten. If there are any teams that are going to get a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, it's an SEC school or a Big Ten school for this college football playoff. I think 3 losses is a lot, but I think we've also seen a lot of teams take a lot of losses we did not expect. And I think we might see 1 or 2 3-loss schools. Now, again, Minnesota has to win out, and they have to beat Penn State, which are some big asks. But I'm just saying, look out for this team. They could be making a case for themselves come the end of the season.
Yeah, they could, but also you wonder there's a couple of guys back next year for this Minnesota team, what it could mean next year for them too, competing in that Big Ten. It's going to be interesting to see.
Yes, absolutely. Then we have Miami surging late to beat Duke 53-31. And look, I thought I was on to something here. Duke was controlling this game in the first half. Even into the second half, Duke was still up, going back and forth with Miami. But finally, that Cam Ward magic in Miami takes over once again, and they get up 53-31 and shut this one down. But I'm proud of myself, and I'm proud of Duke for putting up a fight. I think that Duke is a very talented ball club that not enough people are talking about, even though now they have 3 losses on the season.
Yeah, no matter how hard you wanted to make this a non-Miami Hurricane podcast with your pick
Yeah.
last week, it didn't work out because Cam Ward is the best quarterback in the country. Let's just admit it like it is. Um, but no, the response by the Miami team, and we've seen it multiple times this year. Last year they lost so many close games or games where they fell behind early, they couldn't finish the job. This year, when they fall behind the games where they're in a close game late, They're able to get the job done. They're finishing games this year. Now, whether you think it's through instant replay or them actually playing, that's your preference. But they're getting the games done that they couldn't get done last year. And to me, that's a great improvement with this Florida State team.
And even some games where they were winning with 30 seconds left in the game, they couldn't get the job done in those games either.
Yeah.
Georgia Tech
Just
game.
take a knee. He's
Yeah,
got revenge this Saturday, though,
yeah.
if they do it.
We'll see. Then we get the Buckeyes. They get back on track with a 20-13 win over Penn State. And look, two losses for the Buckeyes wouldn't have been detrimental, but it would have put them on the edge of the college football playoff. And coming into that Michigan game, I know Michigan hasn't been very good this year. Ohio State's probably going to get one back, but they haven't won one in a while against Michigan. And the pressure would have been on to get that job done. Three losses for the Buckeyes just was not something they could afford. They get the job done 20-13 against Penn State. And look, to me, the Buckeyes defense played well. Penn State's defense played well. This was a miserable showing for offenses. I know when we get to team of the week, a little spoiler, I put Ohio State as the team of the week because I do feel like this was a huge win for them. It's a game they had to win, opponent they had to beat to make a message. And I think that that warranted them to be the number one team in my team of the week. I think that's good enough justification for me. But this team did not look its best. And if they play like this against anybody for the rest of the season, they might not win. I don't care who's left on that schedule. Neither of these teams can have this kind of offensive performance again. This was embarrassing. We had Will Howard scrambling for a touchdown and forgetting to hold on to the ball going into the end zone. We had Drew Allar throwing interception at the 1 yard line and going into halftime. And it felt like after that, we saw the same old Penn State play calling in the second half. They were so scared to throw another interception like they've been however many years in these big games, whether it's Sean Clifford, Trace McSorley, or Drew Allar. In these games, they will not trust their quarterbacks to throw the ball and take chances down the field. And it felt like after that interception at the end of the first half, they shut down Drew Allar, tried to run the football, and they never got in the end zone again. It was disappointing for me because Ohio State did not have a good game. They didn't have the offensive showcase that they had against Oregon. The defense for Penn State showed up as they usually do in these big games, and the offensive play calling was far too passive and far too conservative. They were more content with losing the game by 7 than going out and taking a chance and winning this game or potentially losing by double digits because they threw down the field and maybe made a mistake. Penn State,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
we said it. They could probably go to the college football playoff with a loss here. They've probably made it. But this type of play calling on offense will not win you national championships. It will not win you college football playoff games. You have to be better.
Yeah. I'm getting really sick and tired of this game because I feel like it's just a copy and paste. I feel like we could just send an email copy and pasting the same game every single year. Two really good defenses go head to head, and both offenses are just absolutely terrible. And the Penn State play calling at the end screws them over by not being aggressive enough. It's the same thing the past 4 or 5 years. I mean, think back to the 4th and 5 where they run a read option on 4th and 5 with the game on the line. Think about last year where their defense played lights out, but their offense was scared to throw the ball. And coming into this game, everyone, including myself, was thinking this Penn State offense seems to be more aggressive offensively. They seem to want to throw the ball more down the field, and then they just didn't do it. And then to top it all off, the fourth quarter, that goal line stand by Ohio State, I would call it pathetic by Penn State. Just 3 straight runs up the middle from the 3 yard line, and then decide let's do 5 wide on 4th and goal from the 1. I don't get it. So listen, Penn State, you can't afford really another one. I don't think. I know you could, but I really don't think that they need it. Otherwise, there might be an argument to keep them out. But no, I'm just sick and tired of this same game. We try to hype it up every year, and it's literally just copy and paste from the past 5 years. Nothing has changed for either side. Neither side really looks great in the game, and Ohio State just sneaks out because Penn State's scared to play aggressive offense. I want this game to be something different. Like, give me something different besides the basic copy and paste every year.
Yeah, it's just disappointing, and I know it's two guys who are big James Franklin supporters. Look, it gets harder and harder to back this up. Look, you we say this every year. You know the two games on the schedule, or at least the one game on the schedule, because of this year. It's Ohio State. You know you have to be ready for this game, and you know in the Big Ten, even I know that there's no more divisions and scheduling is kind of going to be whoever versus whoever in this conference. But you know that Penn State is always going to play either Ohio State or Michigan every single year. They're not going to get rid of. They're not going to give Penn State an easy route, and they're not going to give Ohio State or Michigan, they're not going to give both of them a chance to skip past Penn State in the regular season. That's a big game that people want to watch. Look, and it's usually going to be two very highly ranked teams. But if you're James Franklin, you know this is the game on the schedule every year. You've supposed to be spending your whole season preparing your team for this moment. And then you shut it all down and run a completely different team and a different scheme at the end of this game. Like you said, just disappointing. And to go along with it, we had maybe the most vile, disgusting fumble overturned in this game. I don't know if it would have mattered because of the way Penn State was calling this playbook, but I think we're getting to a point in football where rules for things that you see and know are fumbles or incomplete passes are becoming so overly worded and overly specific to meet certain criteria for a thing to happen that it's ruining the game. Quinshaw Judkins catches a pass out in the flat, catches it, secures it, pulls it into his chest, and turns upfield and gets lit up, drops the football, recovered by Penn State. To me, clear as day, this is a fumble. He's caught it, he's pulled it into his chest, he turns upfield, and he gets smoked. Did he take a step? No. Did he make a football move by pulling the ball onto his chest and turning upfield? Yes. What do you want the defender to do? Wait till he takes 3 steps and then try to hit him? This was a fumble in my eyes. They go to the booth and rules analyst, I don't even know who, is it Gene Steratore for Fox?
No, I think it's Mike Pereira or something
Mike
like that. I
Pereira.
think. Yeah.
Regardless, he's like, yeah, guys, I don't know. He's like, he does look like he has control, but he didn't take 3 to 4 steps, which is what you need to do per the rule book. And they come back down. And because he didn't take 3 steps with the football in his hands, the call is overturned. I don't know. It was in the fourth quarter. It would have given Penn State a chance. I think they were down 4 at that point. Would have given them a chance to go down and go up or cut the game to 1, maybe. But I don't know. To me, I don't think we should have a rule so wordy that to me and to, I don't know, I feel like a lot of people, that looks like a fumble with your eyes. But because he didn't take 3 steps, the rules say you can't call that a fumble. I wasn't in love with that call.
Yeah, I know, but at the same time, like you said, I just don't. Even if it was a fumble, I don't trust in Penn State that they were going to go down and score on it.
Yeah,
So I don't.
I,
I don't overthink that.
well, I just think it's a bad. I just worry about the future in college football with a rule so wordy that I don't think a fumble should be defined by 3 steps. I don't think that's what makes a fumble a fumble. I don't think that's the difference between a fumble and an incomplete pass to me.
Yeah. I mean, listen. Well, I get that again, but at the same time, like I said, this is just a copy and paste game every year. We can't rely on
Yeah,
this Penn State offense. That at the end of the day is cost them the game. Their offense being too scared, and so much for their offensive coordinator calling their offense or whatever a blizzard at the start of the year with all kinds of things. Look pretty boring and basic as an offense can be in this game.
yeah, agreed there. Then we had a string of ranked teams fall here in the later parts of the day. Houston upsets K State 24-19. And look, this Big 12 picture got even more confusing, even more complex with the results in some of these games. But Houston came out and they just showed out. And same for Texas Tech as they stunned Iowa State. These are two of the top teams in the Big 12 that are ranked. And K State, especially, could not really afford a loss in their path here. makes it a lot harder for them to win this Big 12 and potentially get into this college football playoff. And Iowa State, undefeated. They blow it right at the end of Texas Tech. There was some turnover here in the Big 12. And like we said, we had an interesting Big 12 playoff picture last year. Who was going to win this division? And now I hinted at it. Could we potentially see the same? And with these losses this week, I think we're on track to maybe see a similar result at the end of this season.
I mean, I think I saw a stat that there are technically 14 teams that are still technically alive for the Big 12 title. Um, yeah, it's going to be pure chaos. But I mean, yeah, Iowa State lost. Look, Texas Tech, I felt like was a good team. They were going to compete with them. That's one I could live with. That was like, okay, that one's understandable. And even looking back and watching the game highlights, because I wasn't able to see this one, I still don't know how Houston beat Kansas State. That one was just one that I was like, it didn't even cross my mind that could be an upset on Saturday. And yet it did. So, and now this Big 12, I mean, listen, it sets up really good for BYU, who now can afford a loss, but also for a certain team up in over in Colorado, because now them and Iowa State are both 4-1. Kansas State's 4-2. Iowa State is 4-1. They still have to play Kansas State this year. So you wonder, Colorado wins out, Kansas State beats Iowa State. You were looking at a BYU Colorado Big 12 championship with a trip to the playoff on the line. You know, just like everyone predicted at start of the year in the Big 12. But listen, obviously, there's still several teams in contention that could technically make it. So, Big 12 chaos at its best. You love to see Big 12 chaos.
Yeah, well, let's just drop it down to you. I'm presuming since 3 games are left in the season, well, really 4 games. I think that's what. So let's hear it out. So that means that everybody, I'm going to say we're going to stop at UCF, who's 2-4, but I guess that makes everybody technically eligible here. Starting at UCF is 2-4. Then we've got a huge three-way tie at 3-3 for TCU, Houston, and Baylor. West Virginia, Arizona State, and Cincinnati are all 3-2. Texas Tech and Kansas State are 4-2 in conference. Colorado, Iowa State are 4-1, and BYU's 5-0. That's 11 teams or 12 teams that are still eligible in this conference picture. And imagine this: look, Texas Tech is sitting at 6-3. They're 4-2 in conference. They play Colorado this week. This is a team that might be slowly edging themselves into talk of a real competitive team here, especially with that late stunner against Iowa State. But like you said, the Big 12 chaos at its finest. We talked about it potentially setting up a couple weeks ago, and now it's in full effect. 11 teams still intact for this conference championship potentially. There cannot be a conference with more teams or even the same number of teams
Yeah.
left.
I just hope that we don't get to a point where we have to go through a million tiebreakers. That's my only worry here. I hope things get solved where we get a official too, and we don't have a disastrous tiebreaker where a team who's maybe competing for a spot in that 12-team playoff gets left out due to a tiebreaker rule.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hate uh tiebreaker rules. Maybe we'll have to get into the Big 12s and see what it is. Because I know we looked at the Pac 12s a couple years ago, and I was pretty sick to my stomach at the evidence that I found that kept our king Michael Penix from his first Pac 12 championship. Now he ended up getting it the year after, as we all know, but it was a bittersweet pill to swallow. But I guess we can say maybe they got it right because Utah ended up winning the Big 12 or the Pac 12 from that birth. But then
Yeah,
we
they
had
did.
Louisville beat Clemson 33-21. And look, the competent team curse strikes Dabo Sweeney once again, plays a decent, competent team. What? It's like teams with more than 3 losses, they've just absolutely stomped, and teams with 3 losses or less, they've been absolutely stomped by. So not a great trend to set for yourself, but I look, I'm not going to go into it too much. You heard my rant against Georgia. The rant remains the same. The sentiment is still the same. Dabo Sweeney is a crybaby. He's a whiny baby. He's trying to make this statement against college football by not using the portal, by trying to do it the old-fashioned way, whatever. And he's trying to embrace this villain role, but unfortunately, he hasn't been competent since Trevor Lawrence left. Um, and look, now this is just the next example. Look, you can pick on all those weak teams in the ACC all you want, but the competent teams, the teams that are built for something a little bit more, and in Louisville's case, coached a little bit better. Uh, look, you're getting just flat out. Look, I'm not going to say 12 is a blowout, but it's still a double digit loss. And so we'll see what happens with this Clemson team, but this is just the latest example of Dabo Sweeney's mentality and the way he's built this team not really holding up in the modern age of college football.
Even for not doing your Clemson rant, that was a pretty good mini rant there. I'll give you
Yeah,
that. But as far as this one, listen, it's the thing we talked about, and you look at the games against teams that Clemson's played up to this point, and our point's absolutely correct. I mean, played App State, NC State, Stanford, Florida State, Wake Forest, and Virginia. Honestly, the best team out of all those probably was Virginia, which I'm just going to say is not saying much. And you finally play a competent team here in Louisville, a very well coached Louisville team, and they went out and absolutely dominated. And I'm just happy for Louisville. They finally play and get a win against a really solid opponent that doesn't come down to them losing it late in the game. So, really happy for them. And this kind of makes that ACC and a certain other result that I'm sure we're going to talk about in a few minutes, kind of wide sealing the deal on this ACC and cutting it down to two main teams. So yeah, we got a bit of clarity on some of the in the ACC this weekend with this result and a certain other one.
yeah. Then we've got SC. They roll versus Texas A&M, 44-20. And look, I know you talked about it. This could be a letdown spot for A&M. I think the big surprise here for me is how well the South Carolina offense rolled in this game. Uh, Lenora Sellers was phenomenal throwing the football, running the football. Rocket Sanders got it going as well. I think 2 touchdowns for him, over 140 yards rushing. Just really a phenomenal performance. And it surprised me that A&M's defense, which has really been the crutch for this team all season, that's kept them in all their games. I mean, minus the Notre Dame game has helped them win all their games. And in this one, they just came out flat and got beat by this firepower South Carolina offense. And look, we talk about it. Just a couple plays away and maybe an injury away in the LSU and Alabama games from being a contender in this SEC.
Yeah. It's absolutely tough for them, but yeah, this was absolutely a letdown spot. One of my three bets of the week, South Carolina money line. I hope you took it. Went 2-1 on the weekend. Got the Penn State Ohio State under. Got this one. We're just going to ignore the third one that I was completely wrong about with Army. If Bryson Daly plays, then they cover. That's all I say. I got screwed over there. Some would say.
Yeah,
Um, but as far as this game, look, it went exactly how I was. And I always have a big thing about LSU and Death Valley at night. South Carolina under Shane Beamer in Williams-Brice Stadium at night might be the new tough thing to do, because you look at what happened when Tennessee went in there highly ranked number one in the SEC and they got completely destroyed. Then you have this one. It's becoming a tough place to play at night no matter what South Carolina is, but you talked about it. The quarterback with Lenore Sellers, and I can't wait to see what South Carolina does next year. They're bringing a lot of talent back. This was a young team last year and young team this year. The future's bright for them, 5-3. Absolutely right. They are just a couple of plays away from being a 7-1 football team, near the top of the SEC, and arguably in the conversation for being that top team in the SEC. So they did a great job in this game, absolutely dominated. And yeah, give them a ton of credit. And for the SEC, I mean, My gosh, we talked about the Big 12. The SEC is all over the place here. I don't even know where to start. LSU 3-1, Texas 3-1, Tennessee 4-1, Texas A&M 5-1, Georgia 5-1. Several 3-2 teams as well in conference play. So we're all over the place in this SEC too.
Yeah, and then that final ACC game we talked about, SMU beats Pitt 48-25. And look, again, a Pitt defense that we've looked at and has had a really good year. SMU was able to come out and put up big numbers. But look, SMU living up to the hype. Look, they made that jump in the American the last couple of years to be a competitive team there. They make the jump to the ACC. People wonder if they're going to be able to keep on rolling. And look, after maybe a shaky start to the season with the one loss, they're really rolling right now. And they've put themselves, like you said, up at the top. And it really looks like them and Miami are going to be the two teams we see meeting to face off in that ACC championship.
I mean, SMU and Miami in the ACC championship. I mean, just like everyone predicted at the start of the year.
Oh,
Now, I think the big thing again with SMU, they had to pull the band-aid off and make the switch at quarterback. Preston Stone just had not looked the same with an injury, and they decided we need more mobility there at the quarterback position. That's what did it for them. And that's made this offense even more terrifying to go against. They were electric and absolutely incredible, and they jumped on Pitt early. And when you're playing this SMU offense and you get down double digits early in a game, it is tough to come back against them. So, yeah, credit to them. 8-1. A lot of people remember said kind of put them to pasture whenever they lost to BYU early in the year. Obviously, that was a way bigger matchup for both sides than anybody in the country I think anticipated whenever those two teams faced off.
yeah.
So, yeah, it's great for SMU to bounce back, and they got three really, I would say easy, but this college football season has proven me nothing is easy. Boston College, Virginia, and California in their final three ACC games. So their chances are looking pretty good that it will be them and Miami playing for that spot. But also for SMU, they need to keep on winning in blowouts because due to some certain college football playoff rankings, they're going to need a little bit more work to do.
Yeah. Let's take a look at those college football playoff rankings. We've got number one Oregon, number two Ohio State, number three Georgia, number four Miami, and number five Texas. Look, we talked about it with the AP poll. These have been the top five teams in the country. Really, nothing right now is shaking up that perspective or that frame of mind.
No, I mean these are the clear top five teams. I will say I'm hearing arguments, and I think it's fair about BYU being higher in this thing. Maybe an argument for them being ahead of Texas as far as resume is concerned, as far as big wins this year. But I mean, this has been the same top five the entire year in the AP poll, and we're seeing the same here at the first college football playoff rankings.
Well, you talk about it, but things hold as they do. Texas just has the one loss at the end of the year. BYU's undefeated, and BYU wins the conference championship. And we'll say Georgia wins the conference championship just for the sake of argument. BYU will fill out one of those top
Yeah.
four spots as it currently stands. Um, so as long as they keep on winning, they've got nothing to worry about because they got the two Big Ten teams in there that obviously won't hold in the top four. Um, but then we take a look at Penn State at 6, Tennessee at 7, Indiana at 8, BYU at 9, and Notre Dame at 10. And look, I'm just going to flat out say it. I'm tired of Tennessee being so highly ranked. I think what makes me more upset is that Notre Dame is number 8 in the AP poll and they're number 10 in the college football playoff. And I guess I saw somebody say this, and I think if you look at this top 25, that may be kind of a big decider. It feels like um, the committee is certainly valuing the better loss over the better wins.
Yeah.
Uh, Tennessee's loss to Arkansas, probably a better loss than Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois. Um, I don't know. I just don't know how you look at these two teams even I would go even as far back as Notre Dame's loss to Northern Illinois since that week, and you say that these two teams are even comparable. I think one of these teams is just better than the other. But other than that, I think these are the teams that should be here. I just don't like Tennessee being the number 7 team in the nation. I just don't love that.
Yeah. Listen, I've made my points about Tennessee perfectly clear the past couple of weeks. I made my points about Alabama perfectly clear. Um, Neither one of them I really think are good enough in this rankings. Um, but there's several other ones, and obviously, I'm assuming we'll talk about what the projected bracket looks like after we go through the rankings and stuff. But as far as rankings are concerned, yeah, I don't. I mean, I don't think Tennessee's a legit team, but when they play Georgia in a few weeks, that will get answered, thankfully. Um, and as far as I'll be honest with you, Indiana way higher than I anticipated.
Yeah.
I did not think they were going to put them in the top 10 at all, especially when you look at their strength of schedule ranking. I didn't think they would be put in that top 10. But yeah, but I made my points very clear about those two teams in the SEC.
Yeah, speaking of the other one, Alabama, another team, I don't know. I wouldn't put them in the college football playoff right now. The thing I don't like about the college football playoff committee is they make their rankings every week like the college football playoff is about to be played, like it's the last week of the season, and they need to get it 1,000% right. So they put a team like Alabama in who's 6-2 because right now, sure, I guess if the college football playoff started, Alabama is still talented enough, and the two losses maybe aren't enough to force them out. But I'd rather see 13 SMU at the 11 and or Alabama sitting at 13 out of the college football playoff right now because it's so inconsequential where Alabama and SMU are. So I guess at the same time, why do I even care? But to me, it just feels like we should be rewarding teams who have not lost 2 games, um, as opposed to teams who have lost 2 games, and one of them was to an unranked team when you were the number 1 team in the nation. That's my perspective. But I guess college football playoff committee do what you want. Bam at 11, Boise State at 12, SMU at 13, A&M at 14, and LSU at 15.
Yeah. Listen, Alabama and LSU will handle itself this weekend, so I'm really
Yeah.
not that worried about Alabama or LSU. I think whoever wins that game very much is in the driver's seat to get a playoff spot. The losers, I think, definitely out. Um, I will say Boise State all the way up at 12. I was hoping they would be ranked this high. I didn't think they would actually get this high in the rankings because we've seen in the past the respect that the committee gives to group of 5 teams is usually not very good. So, I mean, look at how much time and effort it took to get Cincinnati to that playoff in 2020. So I know they're really not that great usually with group of 5 teams. So to have them all the way up at 12, I do really like that. Um, and A&M dropping down a couple of spots from where they were in the AP poll. I get that one. But yeah, but I think SMU could have been a little bit higher. But yeah, but obviously what that means for the playoff projected bracket, we'll get to more of that in a second. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that rankings.
Yeah, and to point out what you said about Boise State, I don't think this is the committee getting better. I think this is the committee knowing that at the end of the year, a group of 5 team will have to sit at that 12 spot. And so they're just kind of pulling off the band aid and doing it now.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. And plus, I mean, let's just be frank. There's not a single group of 5 team, maybe Army, depending on if they beat Notre Dame in 2 weeks, that can compete with them for this spot. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll wait and see. But I really don't know if anyone's going to be able to catch them.
But not to say that I disagree. I think Boise State, I don't know, they played like a top 10 team in the country this year. They played like a top 12 team in the country.
I
I
mean,
honestly don't.
people forget that they were they lost on a walk-off field goal to the number 1 team in the country and blew out a Washington State team that's ranked later on down this list. So they've played some quality teams and have played really well. I mean, that Oregon game, I mean, you talked about whenever it happened. I talked about it. We both felt very confident that was a good chance for Boise State. They looked really good in the game, and it looks even better now when it's against the number 1 team in the country.
Yeah, and you look at what they've done to some other teams who have been ranked, who have been this, that, and the other. So it makes Boise State look a little bit better when they competed a little bit better than some of those other teams. in the country against Oregon. Then at 16, you've got Ole Miss. 17, you've got Iowa State. 18, Pitt. 19, Kansas State. 20, Colorado. 21, Washington State. 22, Louisville. 23, Clemson. 24, Missouri. And 25, Army. I know I routed off a bunch of them there. But look, some of these teams won't be here, maybe even next week.
Yeah.
You talk about Missouri. I don't know how this team's still in the top 25. The biggest, most disgusting atrocity of this whole thing is that Army is not above Missouri, Clemson, and Louisville. At least those three teams should be ranked lower than Army.
Yeah. Listen, as far as going down the list, I personally, and this is no disrespect to Kansas State, I don't get how they're ranked in the top 20. That's just my personal opinion on it. I know how you feel about Avery Johnson and Kansas State, but I don't see with their resume and that loss last week how they should be ranked higher. I will say something I noticed in these late portion of the rankings is they kept that head to head, I think, in factor. I mean, they kept Kansas State one spot ahead of Colorado because head to head, Kansas State beat Colorado. Louisville one spot ahead of Clemson because Louisville beat Clemson. Um, but listen, I think Colorado being ranked fair. I think Washington State, I'm glad to see them getting the respect from the committee enough to rank them. Obviously, the whole Pac 12 not really being a conference makes it really tough for them to get in the playoff this year. Um, yeah, but I don't get Missouri at all. This is the most sad and pathetic thing I've seen out of either one of the polls. AP poll last week, this week we're keeping them ranked, and now Missouri being ranked at 24 in here too. I just don't get it. They have looked like a pathetic excuse of a football team in terms of being ranked in the top 25 in Army. Listen, I know they haven't played anyone, but if you're going to discredit them for not playing anyone and blowing a bunch of teams out, yet you're going to credit Indiana who's blowing teams out, really hasn't played a really tough schedule. What are we doing here? So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. But obviously these teams, some of them still technically have an outside chance of getting into that 12 team playoff. But they got some work they gotta do.
Yeah, I mean, really, you look at it. If you're in the Big 12 and if you're in the ACC, ACC is a little bit harder, but if you're in those two conferences and you're in the top 25 right now, that means you're not too far away from a couple things going your way and you're in the conference championship, which is an automatic chance in.
Yeah. Same with the SEC.
So yeah, and the SEC, a lot of those teams are still at the top. So yeah, well, unless you're Missouri, but uh, whatever you want to do there. But that's our top 25. And like you said, talk about the playoff picture. Look, right now, I'm just going to go ahead and discount Ohio State. I'm going to say Oregon, Georgia, Miami, and BYU would get the top four buys right now.
Yeah.
And that would put you at what? Ohio State versus.
I actually have the bracket pulled up here if you want me to go through
Perfect.
it.
Yes, please rattle it off for me.
So I'll go ahead and say the first team out of the rank that would just barely miss the playoff would be SMU right now. And the second team out just barely missing would be A&M. The top four would be number one would be Oregon, number two, Georgia, three, Miami, four, BYU. Now, the fifth conference champion would be 12th ranked Boise State, who would be the 12 seed, obviously. But yeah, it'd be five Ohio State against 12 Boise State, eight Tennessee versus nine Indiana. Keep in mind, these would be home playoff games. That would be a fun matchup in the playoff. Six Texas versus 11 Alabama, and seven Penn State against number 10 Notre Dame. That would be a tough game for you to
That'd
just for
be,
you to watch.
that'd be a
But listen, if you want my opinion on it, my whole specific thing about this is BYU being that fourth conference champion at 9 and Boise State being the fifth conference champion at 12. Boise State loses or BYU loses one game, Boise State wins out. Boise State's going to get that 4 seed and get a bye in the college football playoff. I really don't think that's fair to BYU given their strength of schedule. Nothing against Boise State at all for their schedule, but I just think they kind of did BYU dirty setting them up like that.
yeah. That's completely fair. But look, I think this is exciting. I think the thing I'm looking most forward to, and I know a lot of people are, is those first round home playoff games on campus. This is a genius idea. Um, Look, they talked about not having enough bowl games. You'd have to dedicate so many bowl games to college football playoff games. No, put them on. Let's see a playoff game on campus. Let's see. Let's see Notre Dame, Penn State, whiteout uh, at Penn State. Let's see that.
Yeah. Let's
Um,
see Indiana, Tennessee in Neyland Stadium in a jam-packed house there.
yeah,
Let's see Texas and Alabama, two teams in the SEC that aren't supposed to play this year. Let's see them go head to head. Let's see if Boise State and Ashton Genty almost beat Oregon. Can they do it against Ohio State? I mean, this sets up great potential for this. And again, me and you have made our points very clear about this 12 team since it got announced. I mean, anyone who looks at this and says this is no fun or anything, I don't know what to tell you what fun is. This looks like it's going to be a great whenever it happens. I just can't freaking wait for it to get started.
yeah, I'm excited. This was a incredible setup, and now that we've seen the first college football playoff rankings, we're getting ever so closer to seeing the final product. But look, it sets up some exciting matchups and some exciting hypotheticals. But let's get into our team and player of the weeks this week. I'm going to start with mine at number 5. I went with South Carolina, and now I know that they had a pretty big and impressive win, and it was super highly acclaimed. To me, the reason I have them at 5 is I think this was maybe the most expected result out of all these unranked beating a ranked team here. I think, like you said, and a lot of people kind of projected this to be a letdown spot for Texas A&M, and that maybe a full game of Marcel Reed would be a little bit easier to defend when you know that that's who you're going to be going up against, as opposed to him coming out kind of on a fly against LSU. It's the only reason I have them at 5. It was a really great performance for them. At number 4, I have Texas Tech kind of coming in and stunning them right at the end. Um, I liked this performance, but again, I think it's I kind of went with margin of victory almost for these where I sorted these other teams out. A 1 point win, not to take any credit away from Texas Tech. Great win over Iowa State, but just that 1 point win. I went Houston at 3, going a win over Kansas State. Huge. At number 2, I went Louisville. This was a team that finally gets it done this season in a big game against a big opponent. And number 1, as I already talked about, I went with Ohio State. A thing to touch on real quick, we talk about Kansas State and, their 2 losses, one of them being to Houston this week. It's the winning on the road that they just can't do. And I think that's something that might hurt their college football playoff chances is if they just can't win on the road, which they've got 2 losses. Their only 2 losses come on the road. I think that hurts you when you look at potentially putting them in the college football playoff, especially if you look at putting them in one of those lower seeds where they will be on the road. Maybe you say, nah, let's not do it because we know they're going to lose that game.
Okay. As far as mine are concerned, mine are a little bit different. We have some similarities there. Number 5 on mine, and this is just me being be completely judgmental if you want. Ohio State's on in my top 5. Number 5, I got Minnesota. Number 4, I got Louisville. I think both of those were really good conference wins for both those teams, getting them done. Number 3, I had SMU. I mean, look, they absolutely dominated. They embarrassed Pitt in this game and rightfully earned that second spot. Um, Number 2, had to go with South Carolina. Huge win for them and just running away with it late in that second half. And then number 1, I put this one number 1 because it was the one out of all these that I expected the least. I went with Houston because it was such a big upset. I mean, this one didn't even cross my mind that Kansas State could lose this game. And sure enough, I'm watching the end of Iowa State and Texas Tech, and I'm just like, and they're like, yeah, don't forget about Kansas State right now. I'm like, what about Kansas State? They're playing Houston. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
so yeah, a great win for Houston. I had to put them as my number 1 team.
Uh, that was fun weekend. Our social media polls gave us 2 teams, Louisville and South Carolina. And for us, that puts us at where did we rank who? And unfortunately, we both had I had Louisville at 2, You had South Carolina at 2, but it came down to where the others ranked the other teams. And that came down to you had Louisville at 4, I had South Carolina at 5. So by a 1 point differential, Louisville is our team of the week after a big win over Clemson.
Now, of all the teams that I was thinking were going to be there, I was not expecting Louisville. Good for them though. That not going to lie, I'm kind of stunned by that one.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for it when I looked at it and I did the math. I was like, did I do everything the way that I was supposed to? Um, Not to discount Louisville. I'm glad they're up there. Like I said, they were my number 2 team. But just was surprised to see it. But let's get to player of the week, and I'll just hint now that it was less of a nail biter in this one. But at number 5, I went with Lenore Sellers. Look, a great game throwing the ball, great game running the ball as a quarterback. This is the kind of talent we've seen, and I'm very excited to see what Lenore Sellers does in his future. Hopefully, it's at South Carolina. But, hey, chase the bag. I'm not going to hate on a guy who takes that transfer portal bag and goes somewhere else to shine. Uh, at number 4, I went with Cam Ward at Miami. Look, a great late game comeback, put up some big numbers. It's the typical Cam Ward game. Got to give this guy some love. At number 3, I went with Amarion Hampton, running back out of UNC. 3 total touchdowns, over 150 yards rushing the ball. Absolutely freak game. This is a guy I feel like we haven't touched on enough because North Carolina hasn't been good enough. So I had to get this guy some love because he's one of the best backs in the country. And I feel like we just don't give him the love and care and support that he deserves. I feel like if he was at a better team, we'd be talking about him a lot more because he's had some phenomenal performances for UNC this year. And then at 1 and 2, Ole Miss really dominated my top 2 here. I went with Jackson Dart at 2. I went with Jordan Watkins at number 1. These 2 guys showed out. I almost didn't want to do this because I was like, well, 2 Ole Miss guys. But I just felt like Jordan Watkins was obviously the number 1 player in the country. Kind of came out of nowhere. Top receivers hurt. Next man up mentality. Go out and show out against this Arkansas secondary. But for Jackson Dart, it was a historic performance throwing the football. So I couldn't sleep on that. Had these guys going 1 and 2.
Okay, so mine a couple of differences. My number 5, I got Amari Farrell, the defensive back from Indiana, 2 interceptions in his game, so had to show him some love there on the defensive side. I always try to get that one defensive player in there. Number 2, I went with Xavier Restrepo from Miami. I believe in this game, if I'm correct, he became the all-time leading receiver in Miami history. So absolutely had to show him love. 146 yards, 3 touchdowns. He rightfully earned that spot, I think it's safe to say. Number 3, Bryson Washington for Baylor's win, which, by the way, how about Baylor kind of working Dave Aranda off the hot seat this
Yeah.
year, now sitting at 5-4. He had a great game, over almost 200 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. He was incredible for Baylor in their game. Number 2, speaking of running backs who aren't getting the respect that I think they deserve, we got Caleb Johnson from Iowa. This is probably, if Ashton Jeanty did not exist, this guy would be the best running back in college football, in my opinion. He's got over 1,300 yards, 19 touchdowns on the season, had over 130 plus yards and 3 touchdowns in their blowout win over Wisconsin. And listen, number 1, I watched him absolutely torch a team that I was absolutely terrified, was going to get embarrassed, and they did, courtesy of that man, Jordan Watkins. I don't know what else to say. The guy just, every single time I saw a pass going down the field, I'm like, is that Jordan Watkins? Oh, that's Jordan Watkins. Oh, he's gone. That's how it felt every time they were throwing the ball. I'm like, not to
Yeah.
Jordan Watkins, not to Jordan Watkins. And they kept on going to him. And he kept on scoring, so he absolutely had to be the number 1 player of the week.
Yeah, I will say I had the Arkansas game going on the smaller TV because I was fearing what ended up happening. So I had it going on the smaller TV. I'm watching Penn State, Ohio State on the big TV, and I swear I keep hearing Dart drops back, fires deep, Jordan Watkins, touchdown. And I'm like, are they showing replays? Like, are they showing replays right now? No, it's just Jordan Watkins. And look, social media felt the same way. Jordan Watkins, unanimous in the polls here, goes through clean sweep And so when you're number one in both of our rankings, you win all the polls. It leaves no doubt that Jordan Watkins of Ole Miss is the player of the week. Everybody thinks so. Congratulations.
Yeah. Clearing away was absolutely dominant. Um, yeah, I mean, nothing else to say. I watched him humiliate the team up in Fayetteville. So, yeah, I got nothing else to say. Congrats to him in Louisville.
Yeah. Then we've got our game previews for the week. Not too many, and I don't have too many game picks either. But there's some matchups that I want to hit on here. And that starts in the ACC with Miami versus Georgia Tech. Look, this is a game that Miami found a way to lose last year. Look, they're a better team, and they found a way to get the job done in these close games. They find a way to come out and excel. But this is a Georgia Tech team that's shown that they have the talent to run the ball, control high-powered offenses, and run and control this clock. And I think that's what makes Georgia Tech such a dangerous team on anybody's schedule is the way they're able to dominate time of possession and keep the score close. I don't know if Georgia Tech will win this game, but I think they're going to keep this a little too close for Miami's comfort.
Yeah. Listen, with Georgia Tech, to me, it comes down to obviously Haynes King. He really hasn't, I don't think he's played the last 2 or 3 games for Georgia Tech here. And I think him playing makes this Georgia Tech team very dangerous. I still think they can run the ball well. I still think their defense is kind of solid. But I just wonder when it comes to passing the ball without Haynes King, who's going to step up for Georgia Tech? And for Miami, I mean, look, it's just simple. You got your chance of redemption here for that whole fiasco where everyone in the country was laughing, rolling on their floor laughing at you, including me.
Yep.
So I can't wait to see what they do for Miami. Like I said, Miami's in the driver's seat in that ACC. They feel pretty confident where they're at. Now you got to go out and get a little revenge for last year to keep on moving.
And but the worst part of that whole thing wasn't it like a Thursday night game? So it was like the game everybody was watching. And
It was like late on a Saturday night where there was like no other big college
okay,
football
so yeah.
matchups. I can literally tell you how I did it. I was watching the end. I saw Miami pick up the first down, and I turned to another game. And then saw a message on Twitter that said, "What is Miami doing?" So I'm like, "Oh God, what happened?" I go back and they're showing the fumble, and I see the time, and I'm like, "What are they doing? Why are they not just taking a knee?" And Tim Hasselback saying the same thing. And well, I'm like, it would be really funny if Georgia Tech scored, but it's not going to happen. And then, sure enough, it did. I mean, even my mom, who was in the kitchen, she thought it was the funniest thing ever. She's like, "What? What are they doing? They're such idiots." I'm like, "You and everyone else can agree."
Yeah, I kind of similar in almost a similar vein to you. I think I might have been just hanging out in bed on Twitter, scrolling through, getting ready for bed. Great day of college football. I was like, Miami, Georgia Tech is a game I just don't even want to watch because last year Miami was not good. Um, and so I saw on Twitter similar fashion. I saw the video of the fumble and was like, "What is going on? Why would Miami not just take a knee?" And then I thought the same thing you did. It'd be funny if Georgia Tech scored a touchdown, but they're not going to. Only to wake up the next morning and watch the end of that game where I saw Georgia Tech scores a miracle touchdown. I was like, "All right, somebody's yanking my chain." Then I see the replays of it, and I'm like, "You got to be kidding me." You can't even call defense for like 80 yards in 20 seconds. I mean, how do you fail that bad? But let's get to our next game preview, and that's Clemson versus Virginia Tech. And look, Virginia Tech is another one of these more competent teams on the schedule. Look, they haven't had the season expected, but they've still got a talented team, and Clemson has got to bounce back if they want one, any chance of staying relevant in the college football playoff picture, and two, any chance at staying relevant in the ACC championship picture. Uh, Another game I think is going to be close. I don't know that Virginia Tech's going to win either, but Clemson has showed that against a little bit better teams, they're not exactly a team you can trust.
No, not really. And I mean, I'll just be honest with you. I don't really trust either one of these teams, if you want my honest opinion.
Yeah,
But listen, and that's coming from someone who was high on Virginia Tech in the preseason. Um, listen, this game I think it'll be a low scoring affair. I think if Virginia Tech focuses on running the football at work, we saw what happened whenever Clemson went up against that Louisville team. They could not stop the run last week. I think if Kyron Drones focuses on and then focus on the run game, Virginia Tech can have a lot of success and win this football game. Other than that, with Clemson, like I said, here's a chance to bounce back, kind of get back up there in the rankings, but also kind of get some more, people be like, okay, maybe they can win some of these games against a team with a winning record. So we'll wait and see there. But I think if Virginia Tech focuses on the ground game, they can win it.
Yeah. Then we've got Iowa State in a bounce back spot against Kansas. And look, Kansas hasn't had the greatest season. Um, but Iowa State's coming off of a loss. And we've seen what Kansas can do when they get it going. Now, I know they didn't beat Kansas State, but they showed their stuff in that game. Jalen Daniels had maybe his best game of the season. Um, and so they could find a way to take advantage of an Iowa State team that's down on their luck. I don't think it'll happen, but I do think this is a game to keep your eye on.
I think this is absolutely one to keep your eye on. Iowa State coming off that loss. How are they going to respond? In Kansas, like I said, they're 2-6. 5 of their 6 games were decided by one possession. They really, if they knew how to finish a football game, they really could be 7-1 or something like that right now. But they haven't been able to finish a game. So I'm expecting a really close game between these two. It just comes down to, can Kansas finish off a football game similar to Iowa State? They couldn't finish the game against Texas Tech last week. So which team will be able to finish the game is going to be the key here. We could see some all-time choking in this one from one or both sides. I wouldn't be surprised if it did.
Yeah. On the other end of that one, we've got Texas Tech versus Colorado, a game that's got two teams tied at 4-2 in conference, looking to get a little bit closer to that conference championship game. One team's going to win and put themselves a step closer. One team's going to lose and put themselves a step back. But in this game, we've seen that Texas Tech cannot be counted out. But we've seen Colorado really get it together, put themselves on the right track, and show just how well this talent can play.
I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. I think it's going to be fun. Um, Listen, Texas Tech, their offense goes through Taj Brooks. How will they do? This Colorado team isn't really the greatest against the run on defense. If they focus on Taj Brooks in the run game, I think it's going to work out really good for Texas Tech and they can win this game. At the same time, I really don't know what to think about this Texas Tech defense. So honestly, I would expect a good amount of points in this one between these two. I would probably lean more towards Colorado, but I wouldn't be surprised if Texas Tech won it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's get to these game picks, though. And look, I've highlighted three SEC games that I want to take a little look at here.
SEC bias, get out of here, whatever.
On the SEC bias on the Bold Take podcast. If this podcast was anything, an SEC podcast is probably the closest thing to it. But let's start with Georgia versus Ole Miss. Look, Georgia wants to keep themselves at the top of the college football playoff, top of the SEC, and Ole Miss needs to keep their hopes and dreams alive. Who do you got in this throwdown?
Oh man, I mean, I think this is going to be a very interesting game to say the least. It's in Oxford. The thing that's different this year is Ole Miss on the defensive line and really the line of scrimmage, I think can actually match up well with Georgia. So I think that could be fun. Plus, you wonder about Carson Beck. The last couple of weeks, he has just not been a good quarterback, straight up. So you wonder about it. But then when you're about to pick Ole Miss, at least you would think, I'm like, wait a minute, what are you doing? You're gonna pick against Kirby Smart against the team that's not Alabama? Yeah, no way. I got to go with Georgia in this one. Georgia probably could get outplayed in this game by Ole Miss, but they will find a way to win the game because that's what Kirby Smart does.
Yeah, I'm gonna go against all the odds here. I'm gonna go against all the haters, and I'm gonna pick Georgia. No, I'm just kidding. I'm gonna pick Ole Miss in this one, kind of for some of the reasons you said. I think this Ole Miss defense actually is a little bit better, where they can match up a little bit better. And Carson Beck's had a bad couple of weeks. Now, look, I know Georgia will probably win this game, but I think Ole Miss really found their footing. Look, obviously it was against Arkansas, but games like that just help instill that confidence in your team. I think they're riding high. They can come out and stun a Georgia team knowing they need to win this game.
Okay. I think it'll be a great one.
Yeah, I agree. Then we've got Alabama versus LSU. Oh, look, and these are two teams that have been up and down roller coasters this year. Who you got?
Yeah. Listen, I think this is an entertaining one. I think both sides I think are pretty solid with it. My question though, I'm just kidding. You really think it, Austin? This is a night game at Death Valley? You really think I'm going to go against LSU in a night game at Death Valley?
Yes.
Not going to happen. Not going to happen. LSU wins this game. Bama, similar to the Ole Miss game, Bama could outplay them in this game, but the magic of Death Valley at night is going to win LSU this football game. Enough said. I could go into a breakdown of why I think LSU could win and why I think they're the better team, and I truly do think they're the better team. But there's just something about that magic in Death Valley that I'm not going to bet against.
Yeah, if I was picking maybe the more talented team or, the more talented quarterback or maybe the quarterback that I like better between the two quarterbacks, I'd probably take Alabama in this game. Jalen Milroe is a talent. He's a freak. But look, it's LSU. It's at home. It's at night. And I just think LSU has overall been the better team this year between these two teams. I want to go with the better team, the team I think is going to win. And so I'm going to take LSU in this game.
All right.
And then finally, this is an unranked matchup. I don't remember the last time we've done a game pick for an unranked matchup, but I'm doing it here. We've got South Carolina versus Vandy, two of the more fun teams to watch this year in the SEC. Two teams that maybe a couple plays go their way. They'd be maybe closer to the top in the SEC. They'd be in these college football playoff rankings. But who do you have here in this SC versus Vandy matchup?
Man, this is easily the toughest pick of the weekend right here.
Yeah,
Listen, I think both sides are doing really been really impressive this year. Um, I know the SEC shorts guy. I haven't seen, if you haven't seen SEC shorts, I highly recommend it. For the Vandy celebration, he's going to be at the game. I think it'll be really funny. Um, but listen, as great as South Carolina's win was last week, um, if there's one person in this game that I'm not going to bet against, it is Diego Pavia. We are not going to doubt him. I'm not going to doubt him. I'm going to pick Vandy to win this game, get their seventh win on the year. I'm going to have to do some research. When's the last time Vandy won more than 7 games in a season?
yeah, that is a good question. Uh, we're now I'm dying to know. Um, Then we've got here in this matchup. I don't know why I said then we've got like I was going on to another game because clearly I'm talking about the last game pick. Um, but I like this game. It's going to be fun. Two close competitive teams, but I like SC in this one. I think they've really found something with their offense. I think they might be able to give the Vandy defense some fits and show up and show out. I'm going to go with Lenore Sellers and the Gamecocks.
Yeah, I got it for you here.
I'm
So
ready.
the last time that they had more than 7 wins in a season was all the way back in 2013. They were 9-4 that year. And they were also 9-4 the year before that. So how about back-to-back 9-4 years for Vandy back then? But yeah, that was the last time Vandy won more than 6 games in a season.
That is
So you're looking at something that hasn't happened in 11 years that could go down if they win on Saturday.
Yeah, that's actually unbelievable that you even say that. But let's get to our final category here. Bet of the week. I've got one this week, but let me hear your bet of the week or bets of the week.
No, after last week, I went with bet of the week. Don't worry, I got you. Listen, for my bet of the week, this is a very simple one. I think these are two teams at the line of scrimmage that I think are very strong. I think they're both very solid. I think this is such an easy bet, especially with the number going up. I'm going to take Georgia Ole Miss under 56. I think these are both very solid defenses. I know Ole Miss scored 63 last week, but this is not the same level of defense that they're going up against. I'm expecting this to be a low scoring affair. Absolutely. Give me Ole Miss, Georgia under 56.
I like it. I like it. Um, I liked my bet of the week last week, but I'm going to dial it back a little bit this week. I'm going to take Georgia Tech plus 11. Like I said, I don't know if they're going to win this game, but I like the way that this team is able to control the clock and slow high-powered offenses down, and keep the score low, but not just keep the score low, keep themselves in the game. So I like Georgia Tech plus 11 against the Miami Hurricanes in this one.
Can I just say, this is not the bet I was thinking you were going to do at all. I was randomly scrolling through and I saw Purdue plus 38 against Ohio State. I said that has Austin's name on it for a bet of the week.
Unfortunately, I think this might be the one time that's not free money. I actually think Purdue is that bad. If that was at Purdue, I'd probably take it. But it's not. So I'm gonna stick to something I'm a little bit more confident in. But
Fair
look,
point. Fair point.
we've got a fun weekend of college football action. As we learned last week, anything can happen. We're getting closer and closer to that college football playoff. Watch our NFL episode that'll come out after this. But with all that being said about the college football state and what's going to happen this weekend, that's Austin Waiter. I'm Austin Hill, and we want to thank you for listening.